Hi everyone, I'm Shaylin here with Readsy. Today we're going to be talking about the 6 things not to do when writing a book. Most of this channel is focused around what you should do when writing a book, best practices, things to implement. These are 6 things that you do not want to do when writing a book, things to be on the lookout for, and things that you probably do not want to be doing if you want to be successful in completing your book. First of all, not asking yourself why. Not questioning the decisions you're making with your story and plot. If you're making decisions with your story and how you're constructing it, you want to know why it is you're doing that. Ask yourself, is this serving the story that I want to create? Is this benefiting the story that I want to create? Or am I just recycling what feels obvious? Then you can end up with a story that feels full of cliches or very familiar or doesn't have much substance to it. So you want to be intentional with every single choice that you're making. You don't want to make choices just because it feels obvious or feels natural or feels familiar. You want to make choices because it's what benefits your story and because it's the story you want to tell. Probably the easiest way to end up kind of a familiar cliched manuscript is if you just don't really question why you're making the decisions that you're making. Then it's really easy to pull too much from cliches and too much from what is familiar and known, rather than asking yourself why you're making these decisions and how maybe you could subvert them. The next thing is bailing once it gets tough. Pretty easy to start writing a book and a lot more difficult to finish one. It's really common to start writing a book, have things be running really smoothly in the beginning, and then as soon as you hit a wall, think that maybe the story is doomed and totally bail. The best thing you can do as a writer is learn some perseverance and learn how to just keep pushing through the writer's block or the problems that you encounter. I can almost guarantee that there will be some kind of problem that comes up while writing a book, probably several times, so don't bail once it gets tough. Really, the difference between someone who says that they want to write a book someday and someone who's actually going to complete a book is in the ability to just stick it through when things get tough. The next thing is not thinking through the conflict and goals. I think I talk about this in probably 50% of videos, but that's just because it's so important to think carefully through the goals and the conflict of your story. It's really easy to not think these things through and kind of think that your story can be carried on other things, maybe your interest in the characters or the plot or the events that are happening. But in order to actually have a functional and cohesive story, you do want to have a handle on the goals and the conflict that are propelling and driving this story. It'll actually make it so much easier to write if you have a clear understanding of these things because you'll know what's driving your story. You'll probably find your story kind of fizzles out and is really difficult to write if you don't have a clear understanding of these things. The next thing not to do when trying to write a book is trying to make the first draft perfect. I've used this analogy before, but I think writing a book is a lot like building a house. First, you have to build the foundation, and it's not going to look pretty at that stage. You know, there's no insulation, there's no drywall, there's no paint, but you can't start worrying about what pictures you're gonna hang and the furniture you're gonna buy, what colors you're gonna paint the walls when you're still building the foundation. The first draft is the foundation, so focus on that foundation first before you start worrying about the finer details. But it can be really easy to worry about the finer details and because they're not there yet, feel like the book is bad, when in truth, you're just not at that stage yet. The first draft isn't going to be perfect. It can be really hard to keep writing a book even when you know there are problems, but getting caught up in perfectionism is one of the biggest reasons why people don't finish their manuscripts. So if there's one thing to take away from this video, it's that first drafts don't need to be perfect, they just need to be written. Trust in your abilities to edit later, and it doesn't mean you're a bad writer if your first draft has problems, plot holes, aspects that are a complete mess, need to be cut, completely rewritten. That's totally fine. You have to just get the words on the page so you can go back and reorder them later. The next thing not to do is let writing rules control you. Writing craft rules can be comforting because they give you a framework that you can follow, but they aren't always helpful if you follow them too rigidly. And it can become a problem if you're so used to following the rules that you don't know how to trust your own instincts for your story. Instead, it's much better to view writing craft as a set of principles or a tool set that you can apply as needed. If you understand the reason behind all these writing rules, you can implement them as needed in order to create the effect you want. But writing craft isn't a strict set of rules that you need to follow every single time, and it'll be so much easier to write and you'll feel so much freer if you learn on strengthening your craft so that you can apply that craft as needed in kind of whatever context you want, than if you feel boxed in by a set of rules. And finally is not writing for yourself. It's so much harder to write for a hypothetical audience than it is for yourself. Writing the story that you want, that excites you, that you want to tell, is what's going to keep you invested in and excited to work on your story. But writing for an imaginary audience isn't going to do that. If you're writing in anticipation of future criticism that people are going to levy at you, and so you're constantly trying to dodge this potential hypothetical future criticism, you're not going to end up with a story that excites you. And if you don't have a story that excites you, it's going to be really hard to carry it through the multiple drafts of editing that you need to construct a solid novel. So write for yourself, write the story that you want to tell, and have faith that if it interests you, it's probably going to interest someone else as well. So those are some critical things not to do when writing a book, and what you should do instead. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos from us. We've got new writing, editing, and publishing tips every Friday on this channel. Until next time, bye.